Credo Voices, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Awele Okibo, the CEO of Credo Advisory. In a world where data drives decisions, impact measurement often reduces human experiences to numbers. But what if stories could change that?
24 hours after a presentation, 65% of the participants can recall a story, while only 5% can recall statistics. It emphasizes the importance of storytelling when you want to convey an idea.
According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHE, over 305 million people will require humanitarian aid by 2025. With billions invested in relief and development, the question remains, how do we truly measure impact? On this episode of Credo Voices, we meet Sarah Mak, co-founder and CEO of Folktale, a groundbreaking technology platform redefining impact measurement through storytelling. Created during COVID-19, Folktale empowers communities to document their own experiences, giving organizations qualitative insights that complement traditional data. By advancing SDG 10, Reduced Inequalities, and SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, Folktale is proving that every story matters. Join us as Sarah shares how Folktale is revolutionizing development, amplifying unheard voices, and ensuring that impact measurement is ethical, inclusive, and community-led. Hello. So today we have Sarah Mak. Well, Sarah, thanks for joining us today. And I would love for you to share a little bit with our audience what you do. So tell me a little bit about your organization, Folktale. How did it start? What was the inspiration behind creating this technology platform?
Thanks, Awele, and thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to be having this conversation with you. So in terms of how Folktale started, I'm going to take a couple of steps back because I'm an entrepreneur through and through. And so Folktale's not my first company that I built. I've been building companies for over a decade. I've got a really big passion for storytelling, and my purpose really is to drive change to real stories. Prior to building companies, I have a background in international public health and psychology. And so I had this innate curiosity of always traveling the world and meeting people and always curious about people's stories. And so we know the power of stories. What does that mean for actually driving change around it? So with my background in more health, my co-founder and my partner, his background is actually as a filmmaker. And so I guess taking both of our backgrounds together, the health and the international side of things alongside Dave's background, we've really built a company that's really looking at ways that we can foster, I guess, more inclusive ways by listening to stories of our communities. Prior to this, we created a more traditional film production studio. We had a wonderful time sharing stories of impact in really significant big organizations, helping them communicate their impact and the stories of their work. Ultimately, we knew that we needed to look at different ways of working. And it's actually during COVID when looking at the ways we work and not being able to travel to film and tell stories, we knew we had to try something different. So Folktale is something that we've been experimenting with and just listening to communities on what that meant. What it means to, I guess, build a technology platform like Folktale is really about being able to step aside, right? Using the role of technology as a support mechanism to be able to scale the efforts of storytelling and actually putting it into the hands of anyone who wishes to tell their stories. So effectively, we've leveraged technology to really enhance and support people with telling their stories.
Wow. Sarah, let me share first that we are kindred spirits in the sense where at Credo, this is essentially what we try and do. However, it's typically from the perspective of the development partner. So there's a program being implemented. For instance, is there something you mentioned COVID? We did work with the Gates Foundation during COVID, and then communicating the impact of our communications intervention. So if there was a
a radio spot that was, aired on across the airways, or there's a social media campaign going on. Typically, the way these development programs operate is that they will, communicate their assessment of the impact, their own perspective of the impact. I'm always very intentional about ensuring that it's also authentic, and that authenticity has to happen also from the perspective of the end user, of the recipient, at the community level. So I love that Folktale exists. I love that you guys have clearly provided a solution to a need.
Yeah.
Now, so because really storytelling should be at the center of development. A lot of times you read all these reports, the impact assessment reports, all these technical documents that are communicating in a very particular way the perceived impact. But what my understanding, what you guys are trying to do is that woman who has been using a particular developmental solution, be it a medical intervention or an agricultural platform to help small scale farmers, they get to tell their own stories in their own way. So walk us through, how does Folktale curate those stories? You're approached by a partner and they're asking you, help us share our experiences or our impact. Just walk us through that, just for our audience to really get a grasp of how everything comes together.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm happy to share a bit of the process of how the platform works. So as we know, there are tons and tons of stories within programs and just globally. That's not actually the problem that we're solving, right? And so what we're looking to solve for is that, how do we actually help with the storytelling process? And we know that storytelling is a collaborative process, and there are many people that play a role in that overall journey. So in order to streamline that storytelling process, what we have created is a technology platform, and there's a particular role for everyone. So if you have the program that wishes to hear the impact, the ongoing stories of the users or participants that they're supporting and serving, they're going to probably want to ask some questions, right? Now, typically the ways that we try and understand what's happening is often through reports, as you mentioned, right? And so I think reports in themselves, there is a place for them, but oftentimes it's missing a lot of the nuance, the authentic richness and the depth and breadth of the stories of the people. And so what we do is, through our platform, we have individuals who play a certain role and say, I want to ask a really simple question. I've got all of these different questions that I really want to understand. And then they build what's called these templates. And these templates are often designed in a really simple way. So tell me this or show me this. So tell me something that's really meaningful to you and show me the objects, the people, the places, and the things that are significant to you, right? So there's a power in not just telling me, but showing me the imagery of what's happening. And so when they receive this, and so when they actually create the templates, the platform streamlines the entire storytelling process. The individual that receives that on the other side, so there's different ways of gathering stories. You've got all these different methods. When they receive a link on their mobile device, all they simply need to do is select the device, select the template, and all they need to do is focus on the questions that are in front of them. So tell me this and show me this. They don't need to worry about all of the parts of, what makes a story engaging. They just need to focus on the question in front of them. Now, they also can share what they wish to share if, for example, they're building their own questions. And the platform does is it automatically stitches together the telling and the showing parts of the story into one cohesive video story. So we're in the environment of video storytelling, because video in itself holds so much power. It shows you the richness and the complexity that often reports can't show you. And so no matter where individuals are around the world, they simply need to use any device that they have in front of them. It can be a tablet, device, a desktop, and they click submit. And when they click submit in real time, that story is then sent back into the platform for the individual who wants to hear the story to receive it in real time. So, Awele, I could send you a story request, right? I'm based in Canberra in Australia, and I could send it to you, right? Over, any certain type of platform. You could receive it and send me back a story in a matter of a while. What's great about our platform also, it's private, it's safe, it's secure. So consent is really important to us as well. So that's just a little bit about the platform, being able to show and tell the components of the story in real time.
I love that. So show and tell. Now, so as you were walking us through, let's simulate this if you don't mind.
Yes.
So let's say I'm a midwife in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and I go to community educating expectant mothers around maternal health. My goal is to try and significantly reduce infant and maternal mortality rates. Interesting. This example I just gave you was our very first episode. We actually had an award-winning midwife, Martha Aboyenti, who was on our show, and she shared her incredible story. So let's say Martha comes to you and says, "Listen, I have a lot to tell." So
Yeah.
you send Martha a link. So Martha is based in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and they do have connectivity challenges and electricity challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways around that?
Yeah, wonderful. So Martha wants to share the ongoing impact and the experiences that's happening when she's working, right? So, depending on what role she plays in the platform, she can design the template questions whilst there's connectivity. So because we are a technology platform, there are some of the processes that still require some connectivity. That said, she can basically go and design the templates. And then if she's going to be collecting stories on behalf of others, she can go and actually start collecting those stories in offline mode. So we do have our platform that's accessible for connectivity challenges, as you just mentioned, because we work globally in these types of environments, which are really important. When people are telling stories, it's not those who are connected. You want to be able to get as deep and as broad towards the actual impact as possible, right?
Yeah.
So we do have offline connectivity. Martha can be the conduit for gathering stories of her communities. Now, she can be a particular role, like she can collect the stories as you would. However, at the same time, you can also invite individuals to share their stories as well, right? So it really depends on who's sharing the stories, who's creating the templates. Now, for us at Folktale, our role is very much a platform, right? So it depends on what Martha wants to do, but I would suggest that Martha would probably design the questions, and then the workflow for her would be to streamline the entire collection part and be able to hear all the different stories of the people she's serving. And she can also create her own ongoing stories of reflections as she's going. So by the time she returns back to a different location, she doesn't have to sit there at her computer and write all the reports and try to figure out this is real-time reflections while she is there showing and telling the impact at that moment in time. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, very helpful. So for our listeners who feel that they could certainly use this platform, for clarity, this is something that a service that you provide, they can go on there, the different programs and costing based on the resources you're providing. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a service component, but also we are a subscription through and through. And so similar to other platforms that you use, you can join and you can use it as you wish in order to streamline your story collection process. So it's really about the programs that we work with globally often are working to streamline how they're communicating their impact. Also, how they're doing ongoing monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning. So actually using this as a data collection tool where story is a really powerful data that's really difficult to be able to collect on an ongoing basis. And so we find that for program, when the monitoring and evaluation team using story is a powerful way of hearing the living stories of individuals beyond numbers. Beyond numbers is the most important thing. And then our communication professionals are able to use those stories to better amplify and share the impact more broadly. When these two different departments work together, we often see magic happens because of our platform.
I can imagine. Let's have a look under the hood. And can you just walk us through your team, the people behind the scenes? There's certainly a tech component. So can you just tell me a little bit about your team and how large it is, where they're located, and so forth?
Yeah, thank you. Our team is wonderful. They're really dynamic and they're passionate and really purpose aligned to our vision and mission. Our team is quite small because when you're building technology, you can really scale it, but not have to scale the team. So we do have 6 team members and we're spread across Australia, Indonesia, and Chile. And also we do work with in-country partners quite a bit. We want to be able to mobilize team members because, we work across the Pacific in different parts of the world. And oftentimes it's actually supporting them in building new skill sets within their programs and teams where we find it to be most effective. So that partnership and that collaboration that Folktale does with programs and partners is actually most effective. Hence why our team is small but mighty.
Yes, I love that. That's what I say about my team.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Yes, I love it. Okay, so there are a lot of different um, tools that people could use. I mean, with technology, even with AI. So how does Folktale distinguish itself? Like, what's its value proposition for someone like a Martha? All these different ways of, sharing her story. How will she be able to make that decision? What makes Folktale better than all the other available resources?
That's a great question. Now, because again, first and foremost, we are a technology platform, that's kind of the first way that we distinguish ourselves, right? So we are a technology platform and we do have an innovative approach to storytelling and gathering stories, but also we're a data collection platform. And so some of the things when we are looking at how we distinguish ourselves for the Marthas of the world and programs is really about ways that communities can engage with a platform like Folktale. We're enabling participant-led or community-led storytelling because of our platform, right? So hearing stories directly and the narratives shared by communities authentically without a third-party perspective of their lived experience is incredible, right? That participatory approach, actually looking at different ways, using smartphones and resources available to them, kind of democratizes that storytelling process. So that's kind of like the first part of it. Another value proposition is that within our sector, it's really about enhancing monitoring and evaluation. Because for us, we're looking at new ways that we can actually elevate the M&E process. Because M&E is really structured and consistent in its own way. And so our platform is really bringing to life the abilities to hear new voices at scale, what often is cost prohibitive and process prohibitive. So it's really difficult to do what we do in traditional budgets and the M&E process. And so, that in itself, that process of actors and lots of players working together is fantastic. But then beyond that, I think there's a lot of additional components that Martha might be interested in. For example, ethical storytelling in the way that we securely handle the data and privacy in the consent process, which in a lot of the platforms isn't usually understood really well. And so when stories are received on the platform, we do have a lot of consent and privacy parameters. So the stories are used for their intended purpose. That ways that stories are collected and handled is actually something that we're really quite proud of, because the trust of individuals is crucial. And then ultimately, it's like, well, so what? Now that we've heard these voices, it's really important that stories are shared, that they're heard, that the storyteller and the individual wanting to hear it, there's a connection between them. And so we do have some workflows on our platform where, you're finding people with stories to tell, you're helping them tell that story in a really easy and simple way, in a fun way. And then ultimately you do have players on the platform who can share it and noting that my story has value and that if I am sharing something, I hope that it's going to shift a program outcome or ways of funding that actually has significance. So those are just some of the components of, our platform in a nutshell.
Wow, this is so impressive. So I want us to practicalize this, right? So my firm is actually in the process of starting a peace, conflict resolution, and climate resilience program in northern Nigeria, right? And it's going to be over a 5-year period. Our remit is to provide all end-to-end communication support to this program. Now, how would we be able to, one, curate those stories? So over a 5-year period, I'm assuming that we would subscribe for during that period. Is it that at the beginning of the program, we would basically use your tools to kind of capture initial pre-program storytelling, what's going on, and then for the M&E, would you advise you would now have us periodically capture stories within these same communities or different communities, and over a period of 5 years, we would now be able to track, here's the stories we were hearing before the peace and resolution initiatives were happening. Here's midway through, we're hearing different things from women, from young people, and at the end. That's how it works. Am I correct?
That is a fantastic example of how it can work well. I think it's wonderful. And so what you've been able to clearly summarize is Folktale works best when we work with you at the very beginning, when you're designing what's possible in that 5-year journey, right? So in addition to what you mentioned, because that's a perfect way that Folktale can incorporate ourselves into your, activity, right? It's not an add-on, but it actually is an integral part of building a culture of storytelling in everything that you do, right? So when you're designing the process at the very beginning, as you mentioned, using Folktale to be able to use that as a reflection on maybe program design. And then from there, probably looking at who you want to hear from. But because everyone can contribute, everyone is a storyteller. It's about going first and actually getting people comfortable with using a new platform like Folktale. Because oftentimes it's not actually the possibilities of what's feasible with the platform. It's actually bringing people on a learning journey together. Everyone understanding what role they play, how they can apply it into their current kind of activities and work. And then from there, just starting to lean into an operating rhythm that's comfortable for everyone. And so what's great about it is then naturally, you're going to have stakeholders like funders and stakeholders within communities that want to hear those stories, that feedback layer, that share those stories, that understand who are you actually sharing them with and who's creating the stories and for what purpose. So context really matters. That's perfect.
Folktale isn't just a storytelling tool, it's a movement. Using AI-driven insights, customizable templates, and offline functionality, the platform ensures that stories can be captured anywhere, even in low connectivity regions. More than just monitoring and evaluation, Folktale champions ethical storytelling, ensuring that communities, not institutions, shape their narratives. By combining technology and lived experiences, Sarah Mak is reshaping how stories drive policy, funding, and global change.
So, Sarah, this takes me to my next question, the funders. So we have gathered, using your platform, we've now gotten all this qualitative data.
Yes.
Can you share, how do you now translate it to the quantitative? One, for, the funders, and then two, just for the M&E component.
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is always a never-ending journey of learning. And no doubt it's going to constantly evolve as we keep listening to funders and what they want. Now, in the first instance, when people are sharing their stories through the questions and template, they're sharing it through oral communication on oral stories, right? So then when they're sharing it, they're orally sharing it with you, and then they're including the attachments of photos and videos that really complement the showing pieces. Now, when the story is submitted back into the private environment, we do have a couple of features, such as the story can be automatically translated to a transcript, right? So right away, if you want to use some of the oral information, for those who need to include it into a report, you can automatically include all of the information into that report. So right away, it's just a seamless transition and a simple workflow for different people. At the same time, for our M&E peers, we do have capabilities like tagging and coding stories as they go. And so it becomes a part of their workflow.
Oh.
Yes, right? So it's tagging. It's SDG number 4 and tag all the stories that are associated with that, right? And you can really go through and tag stories at different stages before stories are actually shared. And the individuals who shared their stories can also tag and code. And then you can also have someone reviewing the stories and tagging and code them. There's power in the quantitative coming from the qualitative, right?
Yes.
And so this is where it does come from, because now with the sense making, when you're actually looking at the analysis of so what, let's say this is doing really well, you put all these individual stories and reflections in your private story library. We do have the ability to use that as a simple workflow where actually practitioners go in and watch them and tag them and adjust, and use the transcript, and it becomes a part of their everyday work. At the same time, we do also create what's called supercuts. And supercuts are really powerful because you have individual voices that are contributing their experiences. Now, supercuts is a summarization of a multitude of voices that help summarize kind of like a large thematic that you want to send back or share back with funders. So supercuts are fantastic for presentations, embedding into reports to really look at the analysis and sentiment making across multiple voices. So that's one thing that we also do within the platform itself. And no doubt there's a whole bunch of other things coming like data visualization.
Clearly, but Sarah, this site comes across as a one-stop shop for people that are just trying to get stories and get data, share them in different formats, whether it's video content or even reporting. There's the analysis aspect. It's phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely impressive.
It was built for our sector. Thank you.
You know, in the development world and as communicators, it's very challenging. You're balancing all of these different elements. You have the funders who have expectations around how they want the reporting to be, what they're, you have to kind of manage their expectations. And then you have these, the authentic voices, the real people, the human element that, you can't replicate in a report. It cannot be communicated through a report.
Exactly.
So it's really incredible they're able to do that and still answer and provide, and all of those elements are required in the development program. So let's add a little bit of color, right?
Yes.
You mentioned different countries, and again, I'll use Martha as an example. Yeah. Tell me, where does the understanding and respecting cultural nuance in storytelling is in today's diverse and connected world is really important. Can you share an example of maybe some of the work you've done where culture played a key role in trying to shape that narrative or capture that story? When you're in a really traditional and culture, or it could be a culture that's quite remote and you need to kind of explain certain things and really drill down and hold their hand. Tell me, what are some of the cultural, religious, or traditional elements, how those come into play in your work?
It's a great question. And I think we're still learning as we go. And so when I think about this question, well, I think of it in a couple of ways. Now, in the first instance, we're never going to know all of the answers. And we have to understand, I guess, what works best for the communities and the cultures. And so often when someone potentially wishes to use folktale, we often like to try and identify what we call folktale champions, people who are connected to the community and connected to the culture, who effectively get trained on all of the different features and facets of folktale and how to use it. And so we actually do a lot of the training and learning and development through these individuals. And then their connection to community, they're often a part of the communities and the cultures. They then support in the gathering of stories on behalf of their priorities and the stories that they wish to share. And so I think that's really important, because oftentimes the platform in itself, people can be quite weary of an unknown platform. But it's really about human connection and understanding everyone's role. And so what we've done is really be able to understand who are the right people to be the champions, to be able to support in the gathering and the digital side of using something like Folktale. Another part of this is also some of the other features on our platform, which I'm really proud of, where when someone's sharing their story, they should be able to share it in any language or dialect that they choose, right? It doesn't matter if a funder does not speak that language. Any individual, when they're sharing their story, should feel comfortable. And so we do have a lot of different features on the platform where individuals can share their language, whatever language or dialect that they're comfortable in. What that means is we do have workflows where there's automatic.
Oh my goodness, Sarah. Oh my God, this is music to my ears.
It's great, right? Because tech is only tech, those really large tech companies do not have all of the language and dialects. And so we built something specifically for individuals within the communities to use this. If they understand the language or the dialect, they can actually use Folktale to actually start building a really simple subtitle editor straight on platform. Absolutely. So if you know anything about post-production editing and video, the language side of things is really wicked hard. The workflow. In our team, you asked the question on our team, right? We've got filmmakers, got engineers, we've got people from international development. So we've got a really quite big intersectionality of backgrounds and diverse experiences. And I think that makes us really strong. So yeah, we looked at the pain points there and was like, we can make this better.
Especially in a lot of the countries you're working in. So, for instance, we do a lot of work across Africa, but you have that language barrier. And initially, I thought, okay, where the language component? How do you get around that? So it's incredible. Another thing is with AI. Can you share? It's a tech platform. I'm assuming that there are ways that obviously you're using AI to stay ahead of all of the technological advancements. Can you share a little bit more around that? How you've been able to adapt to the changing needs and the landscape. Oh my goodness, today it's ChatGPT, tomorrow, who knows what it is?
Yeah, that's correct. And look, the landscape is moving really fast. And so we are watching and we're also learning as we go. Because no doubt we understand, I guess, where we sit in the overall role of AI. And no doubt our platform does have an element of that in the sense that, asking the questions and making sure the question, it's all about asking the right questions. There's a component there where we can streamline that process, make it more efficient. Naturally, at the end of AI, you often need to still have that human individual to check and make sure it aligns with the, context and how you're using it. But also there's a bigger challenge at hand for us where when stories are shared within the platform, it's not actually taking information from large language models. It's actually looking at stories that are shared then and there, not just the written copy, but also the nuances of the visual, what people are showing you, and all the nuances that are often missed in the written word. So depending on the subtleties of how they react, that in itself has cultural nuances that often can be missed. And so we understand that there's a really big uphill kind of journey that we're on the process of going on, and that we're cautiously building kind of like human-powered machine learning. We have to kind of build our own capabilities and understand that it's not actually just taking from all of the ChatGPTs, the large language models, but actually it's about redesigning it in such a way where with our sector, there's a lot of biases and a lot of assumptions that are made within those larger platforms. And so I'm really fortunate that I've got a really great group of engineers around us who are looking at the ethics around it. And so it's to say that, it won't be simply a plug and play that we'll be using across other platforms and AI kind of functionalities. We are cautiously watching, observing, and making sure that the ethics of how stories are collected and the stakeholders who are the storytellers are often at the front of any decision that we make.
That is the do no harm approach. And that's something we're also very committed to. And it's so good hearing fellow development practitioners really walking that talk. I really commend you on that. So we can go on and on because I have so many more questions. But we're coming to the end, but I have one question. Can you share like a real impact story for us? You've walked us through the why, the how, the who. Can you just tell us what was one story that you were able to capture that you felt really demonstrated impact, and how Folktale was able to really capture it and bring it to life?
Yeah, that's a great, great question, because no doubt there are so many stories within the platform, right? And so choosing one is often really challenging, but at the same time, it's also worth noting that as a technology platform and our own ethics, I'm actually not across a lot of the stories. I'm only allowed to only be invited into different partners' stories if they allow me to. But I do have a couple of stories that are really, really great. So the ones that I have been invited and had permission to share. There's I guess during COVID, there is kind of some distribution of supplies and medical equipment, I think in the Middle East. And they were, as part of the program reporting, they're reporting on the quantity of medical supplies created and shared and deployed. So very much, it's just a reporting process. And so during that time, we're like, why don't you create a video story using Folktale? And why don't we share the experience of what it takes to deliver the supplies, and let's show the communities and understand what's happening there. And so when they were collecting the reflection videos, there was a really simple shot of all of the distribution kits that they were handing out. And there was this really, really heavily pregnant woman who picked up quite a heavy box that was collected using Folktale as part of the story. Now, if you actually documented the numbers of distribution, this would absolutely be missed. However, because this was collected and, you saw something that was quite significant, they actually stopped and changed their process and said, actually, we need to redesign the deployment of our kits because of what we saw that stopped them in their tracks at one shot. And I thought that was really powerful, that moment, right? And so that's beyond numbers, right? Oftentimes you miss the nuances and the the experiences that are happening in real time. So again, that's one of so many different stories that no doubt are in the platform.
I can imagine. Oh my God. Sarah, thank you. Thank you so much. So before we close out, there's something I like to do. It's called rapid fire round. It's like I ask you questions and just two options, and I want you to pick the first one that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's give it a go.
iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone.
Measure impact or measure opinion?
Impact. Measure impact.
Women storytellers or men storytellers?
Women storytellers.
Sarah. Qualitative or quantitative?
Qualitative.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer, right?
That was
Okay,
a
the
no-brainer.
last one, drum roll. User-generated or media-generated?
User generated.
Absolutely. Sarah, I thank you for your time. Keep up the incredible work. Sarah, I will be in touch. That we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, no doubt.
Folktale sounds incredible, and it's something that I would love for. I would really want to talk about how we can use it and share it with our partners. So thank you. I would love to also check in with you maybe in about a year to see where you guys are going, what part of the world. It'd be great to see you guys doing more stuff in Africa. That's our core region. My kudos to your team, and just keep going. This is really impactful work, and I love what you've been able to do in a short amount of time. I wish you more success, and we'll check in soon.
Thank you. Look forward to staying in touch, and thanks for the conversation.
You're very welcome.
Sarah Mak's journey with Folktale proves that storytelling isn't just a tool, it's a catalyst for change. By putting storytelling in the hands of communities, she's ensuring that impact is measured not just in numbers, but in lived experiences. But Folktale is more than a platform. It's a shift in power dynamics, challenging the way aid, policy, and development are evaluated. With offline capabilities, translation tools, and AI-driven insights, it's breaking barriers to access and ensuring ethical data handling. Through community-led storytelling, Sarah and her team are giving people the tools to reclaim their narratives, influence policies, and drive change from the ground up. Folktale is redefining who gets to shape narratives, influence policy, and drive progress. Because in the end, the power of storytelling belongs to everyone.
Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious and keep believing in the power of your voice. This is Awele Okibo, signing off for Credo Voices.